I never wanted to kill anyone. That's why I became a medic. My name is... Well, that doesn't matter much anymore. What matters is that I was 23 years old in June of 1944, assigned to the 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, the big red one. I'd finished medical training at Fort Sam Houston in Texas, thought I knew what I was getting into. I didn't know anything. I grew up in Philadelphia. My father was a doctor, and I'd wanted to follow in his footsteps, go to medical school, have a practice, help people. Then the war came, and those plans got put on hold. They needed medics, and I figured it was a way to serve without having to carry a rifle, a way to save lives instead of taking them. Naive, I know. But that's who I was then. We trained in England for months. They taught us how to treat gunshot wounds, shrapnel injuries, burns, how to apply tourniquets, administer morphine, stop bleeding under fire. We practiced on dummies and each other, memorized procedures until they became automatic. But you can't really train for what we were about to face. You can't simulate the sheer scale of it, the chaos, the noise, the smell. The briefing came on June 5th. Omaha Beach, they called it. 4 miles of sand between 2 bluffs. We'd land at H hour, follow the assault waves in, treat casualties, stabilize them, get them back to the ships for evacuation. They showed us maps, talked about expected resistance levels, told us the Navy and Air Force would soften up the German defenses. They made it sound manageable. I packed my medical bag that night. Bandages, plasma, morphine syrettes, sulfur powder, tourniquets. I must have checked it a dozen times. My hands kept shaking and I couldn't stop them. One of the other medics, Danny Rizzo from Brooklyn, noticed. "You scared?" he asked. "Terrified," I admitted. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Me too. But hey, we got the easy job, right? We don't got to shoot anybody. Just patch them up and send them home." I believed him. God help me, I actually believed that's how it would work. We loaded onto the landing craft before dawn on June 6th. The channel was rough, waves crashing against the sides of the Higgins boat. Half the men were seasick. I kept thinking about my father, about the oath he'd taken. First, do no harm. I thought being a medic meant I'd live by that oath, that I could go through a war with clean hands. I was wrong about that, too. The run into the beach took forever, and no time at all. We circled in the transport area for what felt like hours, engines churning, men vomiting over the sides. I could hear the naval bombardment, massive guns from the battleships and cruisers pounding the shore. The noise was incredible, like thunder that never stopped. They told us it would destroy the German defenses, that by the time we landed, there'd be nothing left but craters and dead Germans. The ramp dropped at 0640 hours. I'll never forget that sound. The metal screeching down, and then silence, just for a heartbeat. Complete silence as we stared out at what was waiting for us. Then the machine guns opened up. The men in front of me, I didn't even know their names. They just fell, dropped into the water before they'd taken a step. The ramp was a shooting gallery, and the Germans had it zeroed in perfectly. Bullets hitting the metal, hitting the water, hitting flesh. That sound, that wet, punching sound. Someone pushed me from behind, and I stumbled forward into chest-deep water. Cold. Jesus Christ, it was cold. The weight of my medical bag pulled me down. I could barely keep my head above water. Men were screaming, drowning, bleeding. All around me, the water was turning pink, then red. A soldier next to me had no face anymore, just gone. He was still standing, still trying to move forward, but his face was just gone. I tried to reach him, tried to help, but a wave hit and he went under and didn't come back up. The beach was maybe 50 yards away, but it looked like 50 miles. Artillery shells were exploding in the water, throwing up geysers of spray and shrapnel. Machine gun fire was cutting across the surface. Mortar rounds were dropping everywhere. The noise was beyond describing, beyond anything human. I made it to the sand, don't know how. Crawled out of the water and threw myself behind one of the beach obstacles, a steel hedgehog covered in mines. Men were using them for cover, trying to catch their breath, trying to figure out what to do. That's when I realized the beach was already covered in bodies. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. We weren't the first wave. The assault companies had gone in ahead of us and they'd been slaughtered. The bodies were everywhere, in the water, on the sand, piled up against the seawall 300 yards ahead. And they were calling for medics. Medic! M-E-D-I-C exclamation mark. The screaming came from every direction. Men with legs blown off, guts hanging out, faces burned, arms missing, all of them screaming, begging for help. Danny Rizzo was next to me. He looked at me with these wide, shocked eyes. "What do we do?" he asked. "There's too many. There's too fucking many." He was right. There were too many. We'd trained for treating casualties one at a time, maybe handling a few wounded in a firefight. This wasn't a few wounded. This was hundreds, thousands, all at once, all dying. But I was a medic. It's what I was there for. I ran to the nearest man. Kid, maybe 19. He'd been hit in the stomach. I could see his intestines. He was crying for his mother. I tried to push everything back in, tried to bandage him, but my hands were shaking so bad I could barely work. The morphine syringe, I couldn't get the cap off. Finally got it, jabbed it into his leg. Marked his forehead with the M so they'd know he'd been dosed. He died while I was bandaging him. Just stopped breathing, stopped crying. His eyes stayed open, staring at nothing. I moved to the next one, and the next, and the next. More landing craft were coming in. More men were dying before they reached the sand. The Germans had perfect fields of fire from the bluffs. Machine gun bunkers, rifle positions, mortars, artillery. They could see everything, kill everything. I watched a landing craft take a direct hit from an 88. The whole thing just exploded. Body parts rained down into the water. Pieces of men. That's all that was left. Pieces. A soldier ran past me screaming, "On fire." Flamethrower must have hit him. I tried to grab him, tried to tackle him, smother the flames. But he was too fast, too crazed with pain. He ran into the water and didn't come back out. The tide was coming in. The wounded who couldn't move were drowning as the water level rose. I could see them, trapped under the weight of their gear, water covering their faces. Could hear their muffled screaming until it stopped. Danny got hit around 700, took shrapnel in the back while he was treating someone. He looked at me, surprised more than hurt. "I'm a medic," he said. "They're not supposed to shoot medics," but they did. They shot everyone. The red cross on our helmets and armbands didn't matter. Maybe the Germans couldn't see them. Maybe they didn't care. Either way, Danny was bleeding, and I had to patch him up while shells landed around us and men kept dying and the screaming never stopped. Never stopped. I don't know how long I worked on that beach. Hours, I think. Maybe days. Time stopped meaning anything. There was only the next wounded man, and the next, and the next. My medical bag ran out. I scavenged supplies from dead medics. Ran out again. Started using torn uniforms as bandages. Seawater to clean wounds. Anything. The morphine ran out fast. After that, all I could do was hold their hands while they died. By mid-morning, we'd barely made it off the beach. A few units had gotten up the bluffs, found paths through the German defenses. But most of us were still pinned down, still dying, still screaming for help that wasn't coming fast enough. I'd treated maybe 40 men by then, maybe more. I couldn't count anymore, couldn't think, could only move from body to body, trying to decide who might live and who was already gone. This was only the beginning. The beach was secured, barely, but the wounded kept coming. And I was learning that being a medic didn't mean saving lives. It meant watching people die and being powerless to stop it. By afternoon, they'd set up a collection point near the seawall, brought in more medics, more supplies. We were supposed to triage the wounded, separate them into categories: those who'd make it, those who might make it, those who wouldn't. I'd learned about triage in training. Nice and clean on paper. Red tags for critical, yellow for serious, green for minor, black for dead. In reality, triage meant playing guard. Meant looking at a kid whose leg was hanging by threads and deciding he wasn't worth the plasma because we needed it for someone with better odds. Meant stepping over dying men to treat ones who might survive. Meant becoming something other than a doctor. There was a soldier, can't remember his name, don't think I ever knew it, who'd taken machine gun fire across his midsection. His entire abdomen was just open. I could see everything inside. He was still conscious, still aware, looking at me with these pleading eyes. "Am I going to make it, Doc?" he asked. They all called us Doc. We weren't doctors, not even close. But to them we were. I looked at his wounds, knew he had maybe an hour, maybe less. We had no surgical facilities, no way to repair that kind of damage. Even if we could get him on a ship, he'd die on the way. I lied to him. "You're going to be fine. Just hang on." I gave him morphine, a lot of it, more than I should have. Then I moved on to the next man, because there was always a next man. I found out later he died an hour after I left him, alone, still believing he was going to make it. I think about that a lot. The beach was chaos for days. More waves kept coming in. Some got pinned down, just like we had. More wounded, more dying. The aid station became overwhelmed. We were doing amputations with hacksaws, abdominal surgeries in the sand with seawater for sterilization, giving blood transfusions while shells landed 50 yards away. We lost patients on the table, lost them waiting for treatment, lost them in transit to the ships, lost them because we ran out of blood, out of plasma, out of morphine, out of time, out of hands to help. I worked for 72 hours straight, didn't sleep, barely ate. Just kept moving, kept treating, kept watching them die. There was a kid from Texas, 18 years old. Took shrapnel to the chest, punctured lung, probably hit his heart too. He was drowning in his own blood. I tried to drain it, tried to keep his airway clear, but there was too much damage. He grabbed my hand, squeezed it hard. "Don't let me die, Doc," he whispered. "Please, I'm scared." "I won't," I told him. Another lie. "You're going to be okay." He died holding my hand. Took maybe 5 minutes. I felt his grip slowly weaken. Felt the life leave him. Watched his eyes go from terrified to empty. I had to pry his fingers off my hand. They'd locked up in rigor mortis. And then I went to the next one. Danny Rizzo died on D+2. The shrapnel wound got infected. We didn't have enough antibiotics. He developed sepsis. I sat with him at the end. He was delirious, talking about Brooklyn, about his mother's cooking, about a girl named Maria. "We had the easy job, right?" he mumbled, looking at me with fever-bright eyes. "Don't gotta shoot nobody, just patch 'em up." He died that night. I couldn't even stop to grieve because there were 50 more wounded waiting. The smell is what I remember most. Nobody tells you about the smell. Blood and shit and rot and burned flesh and gangrene all mixed together. It got into your clothes, your hair, your skin. You couldn't escape it. After a while, you stopped noticing because your nose just gave up. But I can still smell it now. 18 years later, and I can still smell Omaha Beach. We had to make impossible choices constantly. 2 men bleeding out, only enough plasma for one. 3 men needing immediate surgery, only 1 surgical team. A dozen men calling for morphine, only 3 syrettes left. Who lives? Who dies? How do you choose? I tried to be logical, tried to follow triage protocols, tried to save the most men possible. But logic fails when you're looking into a 19-year-old's eyes and telling him you can't help him because someone else has better odds. There was a sergeant, combat engineer, stepped on a mine, lost both legs above the knee. He was stable enough. We'd stopped the bleeding, got tourniquets on, but he needed evacuation, needed real surgery. The boats were full, the ships were full. We had men dying in the sand waiting for transport. The sergeant could wait a few more hours, they said. Others were worse. I came back 6 hours later, and he'd bled out. Tourniquets had slipped or failed, and nobody had checked, and he'd just bled to death while we were working on others. I still see his face. By D+4, we'd established a proper aid station inland. Had tents, proper equipment, more personnel. Things got more organized, more efficient. We were saving more men, losing fewer. But I'd changed by then. All of us had. I stopped learning names, stopped making promises, stopped lying about their chances, just did the work mechanically. Assess, treat, move on. Assess, treat, move on. Don't think, don't feel, just work. One night, must have been D+5 or D+6, I finally got a few hours to rest, lay down in a tent, closed my eyes, and I couldn't stop shaking. My whole body just trembled, couldn't control it. One of the other medics gave me a sedative. I dreamed about all of them, all the ones I couldn't save. The kid from Texas, the sergeant with no legs, the soldier with no face, Danny. All of them crowded around me, asking why I let them die. I woke up screaming. They sent me back to work an hour later because they needed every medic they had. I'd wanted to save lives, wanted to help people, wanted to be like my father, healing the sick and injured. But war doesn't work that way. War takes idealistic kids who want to help and turns them into machines that process meat. Because that's what we were doing, processing meat. Human beings reduced to wounds and blood types and triage categories. Living, dying, dead, red, yellow, black. I stopped seeing them as people. Had to. If I thought of them as people, as sons and brothers and fathers, I couldn't function. So I stopped. Just stopped. And somewhere in that stopping, I lost something I can't quite name. Something essential. Something that made me human. The worst part wasn't the ones I couldn't save. The worst part was that I stopped caring that I couldn't save them. We pushed inland through Normandy. The aid station moved with the advance, always a few miles behind the front lines. The wounded kept coming. Different wounds, different battles, same result. Hedgerow fighting produced a particular kind of casualty, close-range wounds. Grenades, machine guns at 20 yards, point-blank rifle fire. Men with half their faces blown off. Burns from flamethrowers. We saw it all. I got efficient. That's what they called it. Efficient. I could assess a casualty in seconds, make treatment decisions without hesitation, move on to the next one. No wasted motion, no wasted emotion. The other medics looked up to me, said I was cool under fire, said I never panicked. They didn't understand that I wasn't cool. I was empty. There's a difference. We had a new medic join us in late June, fresh replacement named Wilson. Kid from Ohio, maybe 20 years old. Still had that look in his eyes, that belief that he was going to save everyone. I recognized it because I'd had that look once. He broke down after his first day. We'd gotten a heavy casualty load, artillery strike on a forward position, 15 wounded, 8 dead. Wilson tried to save a kid whose chest had been caved in by shrapnel. Wouldn't give up even when it was obvious. Kept doing chest compressions, kept trying to breathe for him. I finally pulled him off. He's gone, I said. Move to the next one. Wilson looked at me like I was a monster. We can't just give up on him. He's dead. The next one might not be. Choose. Wilson chose. He learned fast. Had to. A month later, he was just as empty as the rest of us. That's what the war did. Took kids who wanted to heal and taught them that healing was impossible. That the best you could do was slow down the dying. That sometimes the kindest thing was morphine and lies. We crossed into Germany in the fall. The wounded kept coming. By then, I'd treated thousands of casualties. Couldn't count them anymore. They all blurred together into one endless stream of broken bodies. There was a German prisoner, teenager, maybe 17, got caught in American artillery fire, had a sucking chest wound. The guards brought him to our aid station because the Geneva Convention said we had to treat enemy wounded the same as our own. Some of the guys refused. Said, let him die. Said he'd probably killed Americans. I understood the sentiment. I felt it too. But I treated him anyway. Not because I cared about him. Not because of the Geneva Convention. But because it was automatic now. See wound, treat wound. Didn't matter whose body it was attached to. He died anyway. Pneumothorax, probably. We didn't have the equipment for proper chest surgery in the field. I watched him drown in his own blood, just like I'd watched dozens of Americans drown in theirs. Felt nothing. By winter, we were in Belgium. Battle of the Bulge. The cold was brutal. Wounded men froze to death waiting for treatment. Plasma froze. Blood froze. Our hands were so cold we could barely hold instruments. I did an amputation with frostbitten fingers. Couldn't feel the scalpel. Couldn't feel anything. Just cut and tied and sewed and moved on. We lost men to frostbite as much as to bullets, saw soldiers with blackened toes, blackened fingers, blackened faces, gangrene setting in, had to amputate to save their lives. Some of them begged us not to, said they'd rather die than lose their legs. We did it anyway. Survival was survival. Quality of life wasn't our concern. There was a point, sometime in early 45, I think, when I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept more than 2 hours straight. Couldn't remember the last time I'd felt hungry or tired or anything at all. I was just functioning, breathing and working and existing, but not really living. One of the chaplains tried to talk to me, said I seemed troubled, asked if I wanted to talk about what I'd seen, what I'd experienced. I looked at him and couldn't think of anything to say. How do you explain that you've seen so much death that it doesn't register anymore? That you've held so many dying men that their faces all blend together? That you've made so many impossible choices that you've stopped believing any choice matters? I'm fine, I told him. Just tired. He didn't believe me, but he let it go. The war in Europe ended in May 1945. They told us we'd won. Germany surrendered. Hitler was dead. Victory. I felt nothing. Just relief that maybe the wounded would stop coming. Maybe I could stop working, stop moving, stop processing meat. We treated the concentration camp survivors after liberation. That was, I don't have words for that, the things the Nazis did. The state of those people, walking skeletons with numbers tattooed on their arms. We tried to help them, tried to feed them, but their bodies were so damaged that many of them died anyway. I should have felt something about that. Horror, rage, something. But I'd seen so much death by then that even the camps didn't break through the numbness. I just treated them like I'd treated everyone else. Did what I could. Watched some die. Moved on. They sent me home in August 1945. Gave me a medical discharge. Said I'd done my duty. Said I'd saved countless lives. Gave me medals and papers and a handshake. I stood on the deck of the ship crossing the Atlantic, watching America get closer, and all I could think was that I was bringing something back with me. Something dark and broken that hadn't been there when I left. The kid from Philadelphia who wanted to be a doctor like his father. He died on Omaha Beach. What was coming home was something else. Something that knew too much about death and not enough about living anymore. It didn't happen during the war. That's the strange part. I made it through Normandy, through the hedgerows, through the bulge, through all of it without breaking. Stayed numb, stayed functional, stayed empty. The breaking point came after I got home. My father met me at the train station in Philadelphia, September 1945. He looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. He grabbed me, hugged me tight, and I just stood there with my arms at my sides, not knowing how to respond. "Welcome home, son," he said. His voice was shaking. "Thank God you made it home." But I hadn't made it home. Not really. My body was there, but everything else was still on that beach, still in those aid stations, still with all the ones I couldn't save. They threw a party for me. Family, friends, neighbors. Everyone wanted to hear about the war, wanted to hear about heroism and bravery and saving lives. My mother kept telling people I was a hero, a lifesaver. I smiled, nodded, said the right things. Inside, I was screaming. My father wanted me to go to medical school, had it all planned out, said I had real experience now, that I'd be ahead of the other students, said he was proud of me, said I was going to be a great doctor. I tried. God, I tried. Enrolled in the fall of '46, sat in lectures about anatomy and physiology and treatment protocols, took exams, did the coursework, but I couldn't do the practicals. Couldn't work with patients, because every patient I saw became one of the wounded. Every cut became a shrapnel wound. Every blood draw became arterial bleeding. Every sick person became someone dying that I couldn't save. I was in the clinic one day, second year of medical school. A young boy came in with his mother, maybe 8 years old. He'd fallen off his bike, had a deep cut on his leg. Simple suture job, basic first aid. I froze, completely froze, couldn't move, couldn't think. I was back on Omaha Beach, and the boy was that kid from Texas, drowning in his own blood, and I couldn't save him, and they kept screaming for me, and there were too many, and not enough hands, and not enough time, and someone else took over, another student. They sutured the boy's leg while I stood there shaking, useless. I left that day, never went back. My father was devastated, couldn't understand why I was giving up, thought I just needed time, thought I'd get over it. You don't get over it. I got a job at a warehouse, manual labor, loading trucks. It was good in a way, mindless work. Didn't have to think, didn't have to feel, just lift and carry and move. But the nightmares started. That's when everything really fell apart. Every night I was back there, on the beach, in the aid stations, holding dying men, making impossible choices, watching them bleed out, drown, die. All of them asking me why I let them die. All of them looking at me with those accusing eyes. I'd wake up screaming, thrashing. Sometimes I'd wake up and my hands would be moving automatically, trying to apply pressure to wounds that weren't there, trying to stop bleeding that wasn't happening. Started drinking to sleep. That helped for a while, until it didn't. The real breaking point came in 1949, 4 years after the war. I was walking down the street and an ambulance went by. Siren blaring. That sound, it triggered something. Suddenly I was back on Omaha Beach. The screaming, the smell, the blood, all of it. I collapsed right there on the sidewalk. Had a complete breakdown. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but shake and sob. They took me to the hospital, kept me for observation, psychiatric evaluation. The doctor asked me questions. I tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come right. How do you explain that you're haunted by everyone you failed to save? That you can still feel their hands grabbing yours? That you can still smell the blood and shit and death? They called it combat fatigue. Said it would pass with time. Gave me pills. Sent me home. The pills didn't help. Time didn't help. Nothing helped. My father tried to talk to me. Tried to understand, but he couldn't. He'd been a doctor in peacetime, He saved lives in clean hospitals with proper equipment and time to make decisions. He'd never had to choose who lives and who dies based on how many plasma units you have left. Never had to tell a dying teenager lies about being okay. Never had to process thousands of bodies until they stopped being human beings and became just problems to solve. "What happened to you over there?" he asked me once. I looked at him and couldn't answer, because I didn't know how to explain that the person he was asking didn't exist anymore. That person died in France. What came back was just a shell, a ghost, a broken thing that looked like his son but wasn't. I started going to the VA group therapy sessions with other veterans, guys who'd been in combat, guys who understood. We didn't talk much about what happened, didn't need to. We all knew. We all had that same look in our eyes, that same emptiness, that same understanding that we'd left pieces of ourselves in the mud and blood and couldn't get them back. One guy, Marine who'd fought in the Pacific, said something that stuck with me. "We died over there," he said. "We just didn't have the good sense to fall down." That's exactly what it felt like. Like I was dead but still walking around. A ghost pretending to be alive. I tried to make it work. Tried to build a normal life. Got married in 1952 to a woman named Ruth. Good woman. Patient. Kind. She knew I was damaged, but she married me anyway. But I couldn't be a good husband. Couldn't connect. Couldn't feel. The nightmares drove her away eventually. She'd wake up to me screaming, thrashing, sometimes swinging. Once I grabbed her throat in my sleep, thought she was a German soldier. She left in 1955. I didn't blame her. How could I? The breaking point wasn't one moment. It was all the moments after. Every day I woke up and had to pretend to be human. Every day I had to function in a world that expected me to be normal when I'd forgotten how. Every day I had to carry the weight of all those deaths, all those failures, all those impossible choices. I broke on Omaha Beach. I just didn't realize it until years later. By 1960, I'd stopped pretending, stopped trying to be normal, just existed, worked my warehouse job, lived alone in a small apartment, went to the VA once a week, took my pills, drank enough to sleep. That's not living. That's not even surviving, really. That's just continuing. Like a machine that's broken but still running because nobody's turned it off yet. The kid from Philadelphia who wanted to heal people, he's gone. Died trying to save men on a beach in France. What's left is something hollow. Something that knows too much about death and not enough about how to be alive. It's 1962 now, 18 years since Omaha Beach. I'm 41 years old, but I feel ancient. Like I've lived 100 lifetimes, all of them bad. I still work at the warehouse, still live alone, still take the pills and drink too much and wake up screaming. The nightmares never stopped. They've gotten worse, if anything, more vivid, more real. Sometimes I can't tell if I'm awake or asleep. I'll be loading boxes and suddenly I'll smell it. That smell from the beach. Blood and rot and death. I'll look down at my hands and they'll be covered in blood even though there's nothing there. I'll hear the screaming even though the warehouse is silent. The doctors say it's all in my head. Post-traumatic stress, they call it now. Like giving it a name makes it make sense. Like understanding that my brain is broken somehow fixes it. It doesn't. My father died in 1958. Heart attack. Quick, they said. Painless. I stood at his funeral and couldn't cry, couldn't feel anything, just numb like always. He never understood what happened to me. Never understood why I gave up on being a doctor, why I gave up on everything. I think it disappointed him. His son, the war hero, the lifesaver, throwing away his future to load boxes in a warehouse. But I couldn't explain it to him. Couldn't make him understand that I didn't throw anything away. The war took it. Took everything. My dreams, my future, my ability to care about anything, left me with nothing but memories and ghosts. I see them sometimes, the ones who died. Not in nightmares, I mean really see them. Walking down the street, sitting in the diner, standing in my apartment, the kid from Texas with the chest wound, Danny Rizzo, the sergeant who bled out waiting for evacuation. All of them. I know they're not real. I know it's my mind playing tricks. But they feel real. Sometimes they talk to me. Ask me why I let them die. Ask me why I'm still here when they're not. I don't have good answers. The worst part is the guilt, not the survivor's guilt they talk about, though I have that too. It's something else. It's the guilt of knowing that I failed, that I made wrong choices, that I gave up on some of them to save others, that I stopped caring somewhere along the way. Every man who died because I triaged wrong. Every man who died because we ran out of supplies. Every man who died while I was working on someone else. They're all on me. All of them. People don't understand that. They say I saved lives. They say I did my best under impossible circumstances. They say I'm a hero. They don't understand that heroes don't keep count of their failures, don't remember every face, don't wake up choking because they're drowning in the memory of blood. I tried therapy again last year. New doctor at the VA, young guy, Ernest. He asked me to talk about my experiences, said it would help to process them. I told him about Omaha Beach, about the kid from Texas, about Danny, about all of it. He listened, took notes. Then he said something that made me want to hit him. You did everything you could. You saved hundreds of lives. You should be proud. Proud. Like any of it was worth being proud of. Like surviving when everyone else died is an accomplishment. Like learning to turn off your humanity is something to celebrate. I didn't go back. The truth is that being a medic in war is a special kind of hell. You're not a soldier. You don't get to fight back, don't get to kill the enemy. You're just there to clean up the mess, to watch men die and pretend you can stop it. They tell you that you're saving lives, and sometimes you do. Sometimes you patch them up and send them back and they make it home. But mostly you just slow down the dying. Mostly you just bear witness to it. And that changes you, breaks something fundamental. Because you realize that all your training, all your knowledge, all your desire to help, none of it matters when a man's intestines are hanging out and you have no plasma and no surgical facilities and no time. You realize that you're powerless, that death wins, always wins, and all you can do is watch. I look at young people now, kids in their 20s, and I can't relate to them anymore. They worry about jobs and relationships and future plans, normal things, things I used to care about. But I can't care about those things because I know how fragile it all is, how quickly it can be taken away, how meaningless it all is when you've seen what human beings can do to each other. They're living in one world, I'm living in another, and there's no bridge between them. Sometimes I think about what life would have been like if I hadn't enlisted, if I'd stayed in Philadelphia, gone to medical school like planned, become a doctor like my father, had a normal practice, normal patients, normal life. But that's not what happened. I became a medic, went to war, saw things that can't be unseen, did things that can't be undone, became something that can't become human again. The man I was supposed to be died on June 6th, 1944. What survived is just a shadow, a ghost wearing his face. People thank me for my service sometimes. See the veteran pins I wear and shake my hand. Tell me I'm a hero. Tell me they're grateful. I smile and nod because that's what you do. But inside I'm thinking about all the ones I couldn't save, all the promises I broke, all the lies I told dying men. I'm thinking about how I traded my humanity for efficiency, How I learned to stop seeing people as people because that was the only way to keep functioning. How I became exactly what the war needed me to become, a machine that processed casualties without feeling. And I'm thinking about how I can never go back, never be the person I was, never reclaim what the war took from me. 18 years later, and I'm still on that beach, still triaging the wounded, still making impossible choices, still watching them die, still failing to save them. The war ended in 1945, but for me it never ended. It's still happening, every day, every night, every moment. They say I saved lives on Omaha Beach. Maybe I did. I don't remember the ones I saved. I only remember the ones I lost. And there were so many, so many. I wanted to be a healer, wanted to help people, wanted to make my father proud, wanted to do something good in the world. Instead, I learned that healing is impossible when the wounds are that deep. That helping is meaningless when they keep dying anyway. That doing good doesn't matter when you're standing in hell. The kid from Philadelphia who wanted to save lives, he died trying. And what's left is just this broken thing that knows too much about death and not enough about how to live. I'm 41 years old. I'll probably live another 30 years, maybe 40. Decades more of this, of carrying the dead, of hearing the screaming, of smelling the blood, of being haunted by everyone I failed. That's not a life, that's a sentence. Sometimes I think the ones who died on that beach were the lucky ones. They got to stop. They got to rest. The rest of us are still there, still dying, just slower. We never made it off Omaha Beach. We're still there, knee-deep in blood and water, surrounded by the screaming, trying desperately to save lives that are already lost. Still trying, still failing, still drowning,